In this tutorial, we're going to use geometry nodes to create this weird displacement effect, view animation, that almost looks like it's lava of some sort. I wish I could have used metabors, but it doesn't currently work with geometry nodes, but I'm sure it will in the future. Anyways, please don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, let's start off with the scene setup, just to make sure you know. Let's get everything done before we mess with geometry nodes. So select this default cube, press tab to go into edit mode. Right, make sure you're on vertex select. You can press 1 for that. Right click, merge vertices at center. Let's press tab to go into object mode and rename the cube our geonode. Once you've done that, we can now press Shift A, Mesh, Monkey, right click, Shade Smooth, Modify Properties, Add Modifier, Subdivision, Surface Modifier, put this on level 2. Let's zoom in. Shade Smooth. Yep, Suzanne is looking pretty good. Now that we've got Suzanne as well as the geonode, the next thing is Shift A, Mesh, our object that we want to displace upon it, so to speak, and we're going to use, or place upon it, we're going to use a UV sphere, right click, shade smooth, GX, chuck it to the side here, S to scale it down, and we'll adjust the scale later, Control A, apply the scale though in the meantime, and then we're going to press Shift A, let's create a new collection, call this collection our empty, we're going to press Shift A, empty, circle, rotate on the x-axis 90 degrees, S2, and we're going to call this empty our circle empty rig, and numpad 1, we're going to press Shift A, empty, plane axis, G, X, 2, Shift A, empty, plane axis, GX minus 2. Once you've done that, we want to select our circle, hold in Shift, drag like this, drag like this. Now the circle is light orange and the two other empties are dark orange. We can press Control P and Object. Now those two other empties are parented to this sphere. Whether we scale it down or whatever the case may be, it's attached to those spots, which is super useful. All right. I believe we are finally ready to dive into geometry nodes. So the first thing we want to do is go to our geometry nodes. Before we do anything, make sure you click on your geonode. Everything will be done inside of our geonode, that single point. We're going to press new. First thing we want to do is delete this because there is no real geometry on that single point. And we're going to press Shift A, input, and we're going to input a object info. And we're going to connect Suzanne as our object info, and we'll connect this to the geometry. Then we'll press, make sure it's on relative, which is very important. Then we'll press Shift A, point distribute, and now you'll be able to see those points all along Suzanne, which is great. I'm very happy with that. And I'm going to put this on poison disk. Just this is my preferred preference. You can decide if you want to do the same. And let's give this a strength of 10. That's looking good. And you can also choose a random seed, whatever you prefer. Then I'm going to press Shift A, point, instance, connect this over here, and I'm going to connect the circle, the sphere, boom. Looking at this, it looks a tad big, so we can just go over here, press S, scale it down, Control A, apply scale. And you can adjust that later as and how you like. Now that we've done that, we're going to click on our geonode and we're going to do a whole bunch of other stuff. But before we go on, I just wanted to show you something. Because we chose relative offset on this level, if we press G and remove this, actually has no impact. Let's press, if we change it to original, then it would move. So relative offset is always the best. In this way, it's not going to change based on the offset of the geonode. That's why I like relative. That's why we chose relative. All right, now that we've got this, let's just move this over here. We need to create what we're trying to do is we want to know the distance between this empty and Suzanne. or in this case, the geonode, which is the relative offset of Suzanne. So the first thing we want to do is press Shift-A, attribute vector math. Over here, we're going to click and choose distance. And we need to know the position of Suzanne, which is already recorded. Change the second attribute to vector because it's X, Y, and Z coordinates. We're going to press Shift-A, input, object info. Make sure this is also on relative. And we're going to use the first empty. And we want to know the location of this in relation to the position of Suzanne, and we'll connect it over here. And this new attribute, we're going to give it a name called distance. So because it's the distance between the empty and that offset. Now that we've done that, we can press Shift-A, attribute, and now we can go to attribute math. And we want these balls to scale, so type in scale, all lowercase, compared to the distance, which is the attribute we just created, and this should affect the scale. And by doing so theoretically, if we press this, or let's just select this, move this around, you can see it affects the shape. So that's all good and well, but it's not giving us the result we want. One thing I want to do is I don't want them all to be the same size off the bat. So we can go over here, Shift-A, attribute, randomize, and we can connect this in over here. And the attribute we want to randomize is our scale. And I'm quite happy with that. So if we made this 1, we'll leave it on 1 for now, but we can change this. Certain ones are larger than others, which is perfectly fine. All right. The other thing we want to do is limit how large it can scale. We don't want this to scale larger than the max of 1, which it currently is doing. So if we select this, for example, move this all the way here, it's scaling well beyond the margin of 1. So the way we fix that is by pressing Shift-A, attribute, color ramp. I've put this in the wrong place, so we're just going to quickly Control Exit, bring this here. Has to happen after we've done the scale distance scale. We have to rectify it then with our attribute color ramp. And we'll put the attributes here. We want the distance to be affected by this color ramp to result in the new, we want the scale, pardon me, to be affected by this color ramp to give us the new scale. And by doing so, it will never be larger than the factor of 1. And currently when we do this, it's on full size, but if we go to, for example, to any specific top, from the looks of things, this one over here is empty 1. Let me just confirm. Okay. This is the main empty. First empty. And we'll call the other one second empty. So everything is affected based on the first empty currently. Because if we go over here, we press GX, you can see it shrinks. That's a really good sign. We're slowly but surely getting there, but I want to flip this. So now, if I press S and scale this in, we are forming these shapes based on the distance of that empty, as you can see. And that's a really good sign. That's exactly what we want to see. Let's go back to our geonode. And this should be enough. The only thing that is purely based on your preference, let me just grab this for a second and just move it here. And this is to do with 100% your preference. Maybe this is perfect for you and you're happy with that. And you can leave it like that, that's fine. I'm going to show you one way to control how far apart this is from Suzanne. So we're just going to add one final thing here to give you a little bit more control. first thing we're going to do is press Shift A, attribute vector math, connect this in over here, change this to vector, or actually wait, change this to scale, change this to float, and the thing we want to affect is the normal, and based on this float, we want the normal to be affected. And we have to just add one more thing quickly. Shift A, attribute vector math. We can leave it on add, but now we're going to go position, normal, position. So what we're saying is the position of these instances in relation to Suzanne will be affected by the offset of the normal. And if we increase this, you'll see what I mean. We go further and further away, pad 1. But in this case, I'm going to put this on 0.02. So that they're just sticking out a little bit more. It's 100% to do with the style that you're going for, so don't worry about it too much. Tab, object mode. All right, now what we could do, just to save some time, is I'm just going to select all of this, press Shift D, bring this down, select this, press Shift D, bring this down, and we're going to remove this and choose the second empty and connect this to the vector information there, but also make sure we got this connected over here. Oh, pardon me, we got this connected over here. And what this has done, let's just move this to, yeah, it means that this one now should also develop bumps, and we will get into that now. Reason why it's not working is because we haven't connected the final piece here, which is Shift A, geometry, join geometry, and we'll connect it like that. And there you have it. Now both sides are creating these interesting shapes. So I'm just going to chuck it over here. And now what we could do, if we want to see shapes on both sides, we can just select our circle empty rig, scale this down, and you can watch them form and shrink or go for any style you like. So perhaps we say we start here, now we change to our timeline, and we press I, location, rotation of scale of the circle empty. S, scale this in, well, let's change the frame to frame 50. Choose the circle empty rig, scale this in to about there. Press I, location, rotation, change to frame 100. And now what we could do is rotate this, I guess 90 degrees, but also rotate this on the y-axis, not on the y-axis, on the x-axis, 90 degrees would be better. Rotate it on the x-axis 90 degrees. And scale this in. So we get the maximum effect. Press I, location, rotation, and scale. Change to, and you can kind of just play with this, choose whatever you think works for you. 100, rotate on the y-axis, or on the x-axis. Numpad 1, rotate this way, and now I'm going to press rotate on, let's try the z-axis. I press Z twice, press I, location, rotation, and scale, and just for interest's sake we go back, we press play, and we can watch this work. There we go, and we can end this at 150. And we're pretty much done. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. All we're going to do now is just add some materials to this. So in the shader editor, I'm going to select this. And we're just going to go Shift A, Shader, Mix Shader, connect this over here. And let's select this, make this black. Go to our material viewport. Press Shift A. And let's use a diffuse shader. Here we go. Connect this over here. Wait for it to load. And let's make this also black. And the way we separate these colors, we'll use a texture. And you can use any one you like. I am going to use, in this example, just to be different, a brick texture. And connect this into that factor over there. That's quite cool. And you can mess with the size. Pardon me. The thickness of the mortar, I guess. Make it slightly off like that. You can create some interesting shapes. Okay, so that's going to be our core shape. Then we're going to select our sphere, which is this over here. We're going to give this a material, and we're going to go crazy over here. We're going to press Shift A, Shader, Mix Shader, Shader, Emission. In fact, we don't even need to use a mix shader. We can just use an emission with mix RGB. Let's give this a factor of 30. And then we're going to press Shift A, Color, Mix RGB, Shift D, Mix RGB, Shift D, Mix RGB. And now we can use 4 colors. So the first color I'm going to use, let's make it the lightest color, like a yellow. Second color I'm going to use, let's make it the second darkest. Next color I'm going to use, second lightest. And finally the darkest color. And we're going to have to, because it's on 30, we're going to have to bring this down a bit. But before we even do that, we're also going to choose multiply over here. And then we're going to press Shift A, Texture, and let's use Voronoi. And you can use it, Musgraph actually looks quite nice. That's Voronoi, but I'll use Voronoi twice in this example just to be different. Why not? Shift A and Musgrave, whatever it's called. Connect this into the core one. Zoom in. Right, so we could mess with this strength. So what you could do if you want to have some fun and just animate this a little bit, which is a very cheap and lazy way to animate. No. Come on. Change to 3D viewport. Change to timeline. We can say change to render view. Technically I should be looking at this. There we go. So what we could do is we could say, you know what, on keyframe 1 this is going to be 5. Go to keyframe 1, well, let's make it the full thing, 150. Make this 25 and press I. And we can do a similar thing with all the rest as well. Just to make it seem a little bit more live, we press I, go to keyframe 150, make this 30, press I. And we'll do the same here. Let's also change the shape here to Minkowski. And start this off on 30. Press I. Go to 150. Change it to 5. Press I. And just for fun, let's see what happens when we make this multiply. Okay, I really don't like multiply. Let's leave it on add. Now, we're still not getting the result we want, and that's most likely partially due to that. Let's just change the strength of the emission quickly to 1. And what we could do is we could just bring this all the way down to here. Bring this all the way down. And I leave that about there. I'm going to leave it like that. And now if we go to keyframe 1, you can see the animation somewhat work. Looks pretty lame, but it's a short tutorial. It's not really the focus of what we're doing here. Now that we've done that, we can see it in our scene. Cool. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.